principal of the college, I have heard some extraordinary stories and have been inspired by journeys that started at Bethlehem and continued along paths that have made genuine differences to the world. And today's guest is yet another wonderful example of this. Sarah Haid, College SRC President from the HSC class of 2003, is an international human rights consultant. She describes herself as a passionate human rights advocate with postgraduate qualifications in international law, with extensive experience working for gender equality, disability rights and social justice in Australia and Timor-Leste. In addition to policy and research work with the Australian Human Rights Commission, University of Sydney and Attorney General's Department, Sarah has ongoing relationships with United Nations Women, Women of Museums Australia Network, and is the founding director of Maraman Ba Futuru, a non-for-profit organisation in Dili, Timor-Leste, empowering people with disabilities and their families. Sarah is a proud second-generation Bethlehem student. Her mum is also here, who is an ex-Bethlehem student, and is also the sister of our very precious Mrs. Carolyn Haid-Messer. I would now like to invite Sarah to the altar to deliver the Bethlehem Day Address.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen among us. When I sat down to think about giving this talk today, I crunched the numbers and realised that it's been 5 million minutes since I last stood behind this podium. It's lucky for you guys that I only have 5 minutes to talk to you today. But in those 5 minutes, I want to tell you about 4 things. What I've been up to since I graduated in 2003, how coming to school here at Bethlehem was a foundational experience for me, why you should be optimistic about the future, and how our story as Bethlehem girls connects to a bigger global story. When I finished Year 12, I had an amazing summer with my friends and then went straight to uni. I studied history and philosophy and learnt a lot about how the world works, and then went on to do a law degree because I think I knew even then that I wanted to make a difference in the world. It was then that I got my first lucky break. A well-connected lecturer of mine invited me to apply for a job with the Australian Human Rights Commission. I worked there as a paralegal. That's the lackey who does the researching and referencing and running around for the lawyers. In my first performance review, my boss told me that I bought the best cakes for the team. It was a very junior position, but I was super intimidated to be working somewhere so important. The years went by and I gained experience and confidence. When I graduated from my law degree, I was promoted from paralegal to policy officer. And I worked in the team at the Commission that focused on the rights of children, LGBTI communities, refugees and asylum seekers. I visited immigration detention centres and spoke to some people who'd lost all their hope. It was a tough job, but I feel really grateful to have had it. The Australian government lets a precious few people inside those centres, and I got rare first-hand experience of frontline human rights work. From the Commission, I packed up my things and moved to Darwin, and I worked at NAJA, that's the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency. I helped out with legal aid across the top end, and I got to visit ancient country and incredible communities. I caught a tiny plane to the Tiwi Islands and a dirty 4-wheel drive into Arnhem Land, and it was a total honour and privilege. From Darwin, I kept travelling further north. I was chosen for the Australian Youth Ambassador program, and I went to Dili in East Timor to work on disability rights. Wow, what an experience. I lived and worked in Timor for a year. I learnt the language, I explored remote islands, I got caught in some huge tropical storms, and I made lifelong friends. I still work with a small not-for-profit that I helped set up in Timor, which helps empower people with disabilities through access to education. Back in Australia, I got my master's degree. I worked on a research project at Sydney Uni looking at human rights in Australian museums, and I coordinated the building of a new human rights exhibition at Sydney Jewish Museum. I went to visit Timor a handful of times over those years, and I did one more big contract over there working for the United Nations on a Violence Against Women project. Today I'm back at the Australian Human Rights Commission, working this time on the National Inquiry into Sexual Harassment. My colleagues and I are going to deliver our report in October, which looks at the pretty shameful stuff that Australian women are still subjected to every day when they get up and go to work. We'll be recommending some big changes. It's an excellent feeling to be working on something you believe in, and very cool to see your work in the news. What does all this have to do with Bethlehem? I grew up in a pretty modest way. My awesome mum, who everybody has pointed out came to this school before my sisters and I did, brought us up by herself, and she taught us to have integrity and to be kind. I think coming to school here and all the principles and values that come along with being a Bethlehem girl built on that and set me up for the things that I later did. Mr. Guire's ancient history classes taught me curiosity, humility, and empathy. Mrs. French treated me like a grown-up and encouraged me to expand my brain. Mrs. McGrath taught me some real-world smarts and always encouraged us to have fun. One teacher who wasn't here while I was at school was Miss Hyde-Messer, who, as you know, is my big sister Caroline. She'll have a go at me later for embarrassing her, but she put up with me when I was little and annoying, bailed me out when I got in trouble, looked after me when some Christian Brothers Lewisham boy or other broke my heart, and believed in all my crazy dreams. When I was at school, sitting where you guys are now, I heard a lot of guest speakers tell us that high school are the best years of your life. I was always dubious when I heard that. I reckon high school is like any other time in your life. There are some amazing high points, but there are some rough patches as well. Being a teenager is no walk in the park. But I would say this to you. You rarely get the kind of chance that you guys do right now to think about who you want to be and what you want to contribute to the world. A lot of the wonderful things I've been able to do have been the result of luck, but I was open to that luck finding me. And I was open because of the experiences that I had while here at school. I knew from my time at Bethlehem that I wanted to make a positive change to the world, and I wanted to address some of the big global problems that I saw, like injustice and inequality. You have the time right now to think these things through, and a dedicated team of people backing you in. I'm talking about your teachers. Work with them because they want to see you win. If you take one thing away from my talk today, I'd love it to be this: be optimistic. There are so many exciting things to look forward to in each and every one of our futures. And there are so many reasons to be excited about the future of the world as well. The news is so full of doom and gloom that it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the world is in a better state than it's ever been. Global poverty and hunger, legal slavery, nuclear arms, and child labour are declining all over the world. We have better international systems than ever before to work on big problems. Meanwhile, good things are on the rise all over the planet. Literacy, immunisation, protected nature, access to clean drinking water, child cancer survival rates, electricity and internet coverage, and girls' education. And while we're on that topic, I want to finish by telling you this. The fact that we're here at school today is totally political and totally revolutionary. It's super easy to get caught up in the fact that you've got a double period of your worst subject after lunch, and it takes a bit of effort to think about how the people who came before us fought for the right to this thing that we completely take for granted. A wonderful thinker called Hans Rosling said this: "Educating girls has proven to be one of the world's best ever ideas. When women are educated, all sorts of wonderful things happen in societies. Think of a stronger workforce, healthier families, and better educated children in a virtuous cycle of improvement." Sister Mary Aikenhead and those Sisters of Charity were totally ahead of their time. Imagine how many people told them to stop being silly and that educating girls was a waste of effort. I wouldn't be standing up here today if they had listened. In fact, this whole hall would be empty. So thanks for your time, guys, and here's to those visionary and rebellious nuns.
Sarah, on behalf of the college, we'd like to not only thank you for your time this morning, but to thank you for sharing your very inspirational story and for encouraging the girls in their future endeavours as well. So could we please give a final applause?